Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the Johns Hopkins School of Education, School Administration and Supervision virtual information session. My name is Sion John. I'm the Assistant Director of Admissions here at the Johns Hopkins School of Education. Also here with me, I have my colleague from the Office of Admissions, and she will introduce herself.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tanya McMillan. I am an admissions coordinator here at the School of Education. Thank you so much for joining us today.
And presenting today, we also have a student speaker, Ray Walker, and we also have Dr. Annette Anderson, professor and faculty lead of the School Administration and Supervision program. And before we get started, I would like to cover a few housekeeping topics. First, today's webinar is being recorded. We'll be able to share the link to the recorded video within 1 week. There will be a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Please type your question in the Q&A box and we will answer your questions. And next, I would like to share the agenda for today's virtual information session. We will kick off the presentation sharing an overview of the Johns Hopkins School of Education. Then Dr. Anderson will go over details of the School Administration and Supervision programs. And next, our student speaker, Ray Walker, will talk about his experience in the program. And lastly, we'll wrap it up with admissions requirements, go over financial aid scholarship, and leave the floor open for questions at the end. And to start, we're one of 9 schools at Johns Hopkins University. We began offering college courses for teachers in 1909, and then we became our own school in 2007. We are proud to share that the Johns Hopkins School of Education is consistently ranked one of the top schools in education by the U.S. News and World Report. And for school enrollment, we have approximately 1,741 students, and we offer 25 graduate programs, and that includes our doctoral, master's, and graduate certificate programs. And lastly, we have over 24,000 SOE alums. And for faculty introduction, I would like to introduce you to Dr. Annette Anderson. Dr. Anderson is a native of Baltimore and a graduate of Baltimore City Public Schools. She has served in a variety of school-based positions, including classroom teacher, teacher leader, curriculum coordinator, and assistant principal. She served as the Chief Executive Officer and founding principal of Widener Partnership Charter School, the first university-assisted charter school in Pennsylvania. The school quickly became known to state and local education officials as a successful model for university public school partnerships. So at this time, I would like to hand the floor over to Dr. Anderson. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I so appreciate that everyone is here this afternoon to talk about your interest in school administration and supervision. We know that schools right now are in a very turbulent moment in terms of history. So I'm looking forward to hearing from all of you about your interest in our program and also in providing you information and background about how our program prepares its candidates to become graduates that go into schools ready to change the world. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the question you have to ask yourself today as you come to this conversation is, are you ready to lead? So we know that being an effective school leader in today's evolving educational environment requires skills, knowledge, and dispositions that will enable you to make sound leadership decisions to have lasting academic, social, and community impact. And so we believe that you have to really just demonstrate strength in those 3 areas, those 3 domains of knowledge, skills, and dispositions to be ready to go into the field of administrative leadership and make the impact that you hope to make. We have online admin and supervision programs, as well as a face-to-face program in our School of Education to help you prepare to be highly proficient. So not just to be able to quickly ascend into those roles, but to do it in a manner that will allow you to be impactful so that you have the skills that you need to transition into leadership with expertise, stamina, and support. So it's not enough for us to just say, okay, you're ready, and put you in positions where you will quickly flounder, but we want you to be ready for leadership and have the support that you need. And so also we do currently offer a certificate program for educational leadership in independent schools. And we're currently developing a master's degree, a full online master's degree in educational leadership for independent schools. And that we expect to be ready and to start classes in that for the summer of 2024. So we are going through the process now to get those courses approved for that. Thank you. Next slide, please. So again, the question to ask yourself as you sit here today is, are you ready? So as I said before, our School of Education prepares school leaders and change agents who are ready to address complex challenges in education and in communities as reflective practitioners, evidence-based decision makers, applied technology integrators, diversity advocates, and yes, absolutely experts in content. Thank you. Next slide, please. The other thing to consider is where you want to be in your career. So depending on what your career goals are, our School Administration and Supervision programs will help to prepare you for a variety of roles in schools, including head of school, school leader as a principal, assistant principal, a department lead, a chair, a content specialist, a curriculum coordinator, an instructional leadership team member, or other district-wide leadership roles as defined by your local school districts. So getting your Admin 1 through our program really does help many of our graduates to go into those positions very quickly. Thank you. Next slide, please. The question you may also be asking yourself as you sit here in today's webinar is whether you belong at a school like Johns Hopkins. So I'm here to say, yes, affirmatively, you do belong in a school like ours because we know that we have programs that are going to prepare the next generation of leaders to lead successfully. And so people question themselves because there are various aspects about Hopkins that may feel daunting. So I want to dispel some of those myths. First, around rigor. A lot of our admin and supervision students routinely wonder whether they belong at Hopkins given our international profile and reputation for rigor and intellectual stimulation. Absolutely, we do have a strong academic profile. But while that's challenging, our graduates frequently report that they have robust classroom dialogue in our courses and that our course activities put them at a distinct advantage over their peers as they apply for future positions. Next, value. While our price point may initially seem a little higher than some local institutions, we are priced competitively with our other nationally ranked peers. And the lasting Johns Hopkins credential has great potential to put you ahead of the pack as you consider your future career and graduate school choices. Number 3, networks. In alumni surveys, our graduates often reflect that the networks that they build while they're in our programs are helpful as they complete their candidacy. And many of our candidates report that colleagues recommend this program to them. So you may be here today because a neighbor, a friend, a colleague, a fellow teacher recommended the program to you. And so those networks get strengthened when you come into our program, and many of our candidates leave having a very robust network to rely on because you're learning about many different types of school settings in which our school leaders thrive. And then finally, diversity. Our School of Education absolutely values diversity. Our diverse student body is comprised of both recent college graduates, instructional leadership teams, classroom teachers, as well as experienced educators, counselors, and content specialists. In particular, our online admin and supervision certificate frequently attracts candidates from around the world and the nation So I like to say from places as close as Glen Elg, Maryland, to as far as Georgia, to as far as Germany, to even Greece. And so this makes for great diversity in our online course discussions as we think through what education means in our personal setting, and then how we apply that to a broader context. Our programs are usually primarily women. We have about 76% of our students are female and 24% are male, but our student faculty ratio, I should say, is 10-1. So you do get a lot of personalized attention where you need it. Thank you. Next slide, please. All right, so let me start talking about some of the program options that we have in our admin and supervision space. So for those who have just a bachelor's degree and you're currently certified in a public school setting, our School of Education offers a 39 credit face-to-face and online master's degree in admin and supervision. And candidates have up to 5 years to complete this master's program. Many of our candidates do, however, complete the program within 3 years by taking 2 courses per semester. In addition, we offer 2 online certificate offerings in admin and supervision. We offer one that's our traditional online certificate program, and we also have an online partnership with those who are in the current Teach for America master's degree program here at Hopkins. And so those candidates also have up to 3 years to complete all of their certificate programs so that they can move forward with the next step of their career. Thank you. Next slide, please. All right, so getting through the program. Typically, all of our courses are now offered online in the spring, the summer, and the fall. I will say that our internship for the admin and supervision program is not offered during the summer. That is offered only in the spring and the fall. And our face-to-face independent school leadership courses are generally offered in Baltimore. Our online admin and supervision courses typically have 2 starts in the semester, a regular start and a late start. So for example, our regular semester starts in January, and then our late start begins in March. And so for those who want the regular fall start, that would be an August start, and then the late start would be in October. So people can take 1 class per start or 2 classes per start, depending on what your schedule availability looks like. As I said a moment ago, the capstone internship is not offered during the summer semester, and candidates can take a maximum of 2 courses each semester to qualify for financial aid. If people need to take 3 courses in a semester, then you can reach out to me so that I can evaluate the circumstances to decide whether to approve to allow you to take an additional course. Some candidates choose to take 1 course per semester, depending on their schedule, and others decide to take 2. So candidates should approach their site-based mentor at this stage to think about whether or not they're going to have their site-based mentor support for the internship. So it's not too soon now to reach out to your principal, your assistant principal, your department chair, whoever is already credentialed with the Admin 1 to see whether or not they will support you as you begin your candidacy in this program. Because once you get to the internship, you will definitely need to have a site-based mentor identified, and you will have paperwork that both you and your site-based mentor will need to complete and return to us so that we can facilitate your entry into the internship. And then next is that the face-to-face candidates, we typically have had historically an internship orientation at the Baltimore campus for those who are in the face-to-face program so that they can get familiar with the requirements of the internship. The online students will have online internship orientation. Thank you. Next slide, please. All right, so there are 2 admin and supervision certificate pathways that are open to all ANS candidates who already have a master's degree. So if you have a master's degree in another area, for example, a content-specific area like biology or English, and you're in a secondary setting, then our certificate will be exactly what you need to get credentialed. So our graduate students can then choose from a roster of available online courses. The pace is very flexible. It's meant to accommodate the graduate students' very busy life. And those students typically have flexibility to choose the sequence of these courses. They're also able to enroll in those courses and decide how quickly they want to take those courses, whether they want to take them all at the same time, or as I said, you have up to 5 years in the master's program and up to 3 years in the certificate program. So some people like to take their time and take their classes one per semester. Other people like to front load the courses pretty heavily to try to get through the roster of courses that they will need to graduate pretty quickly. All right, next slide, please. All right, this is a profile of our Teach for America partnership. Our specially prescribed JHU Teach for America cohort is open to those who are currently in the TFA program at Johns Hopkins. So our Johns Hopkins program is a master's degree program, and students come into our program often taking 1 or 2 courses as electives and then deciding that they want to complete the full certificate. So you may have already taken school law or effective leadership as electives. If that is the case, then you are then encouraged to apply to enroll in the full program for the certificate to complete the other 4 courses in the same manner that you see here on the slide. So you would take then you would take organization and administration of schools, supervision and professional development, and then conclude with curriculum theory and the internship. So that's the option that we offer for those who are currently in our TFA program pathway, who have taken school law and or effective leadership as electives. Thank you. Next slide, please. For the rest of you who are interested in the program, these are the 6 courses that outline our certificate program. So you have the Organization and Administration of Schools course and the Effective Leadership courses that I often recommend students begin the program with. So I usually say O&A and Effective Leadership give you a good grounding for the rigor of the additional courses like supervision, your curriculum theory course, and your school law course. The internship is the only course that has to be taken in the final sequence. The rest of these courses, however, can be taken in any sequence that you choose. But the internship is the capstone of this program, and so you must take that at the end of the rest of your courses. Thank you. Next slide, please. Now, you can finish this entire certificate in 1 year. I've seen it done many, many times. And the way that it happens is candidates come to us now and they want to start taking courses immediately. So they get registered, they're admitted first, and then they get registered. And so their course sequence looks a little something like this. So you would start by taking, as I just said, Organization and Administration of Schools and Effective Leadership. So those are typically the 2 foundational courses that I recommend that you start with. You don't have to, but I certainly do see the benefit for many students when they do it this way. So taking those 2 courses in 1 semester would get you started. And in this example, you would start in the spring, and then you take 2 classes over the summer, and you finish your internship and your final course, curriculum theory, in the fall. For those of you who are on today's call, however, you could use the same schedule, but use it through the summer, the fall, and the spring. So you would take O&A and Effective Leadership in the summer, you would take supervision and school law in the fall, and then you would take the curriculum theory and the internship course in the spring. So you would be done still in a calendar year. You would be done with your Admin 1 by next spring. So as I said, the only time there's a little hiccup in this 1 year profile is when students need to try to take the classes starting in the fall to the spring, and then we don't offer the internship in the summer. So they will have to wait until the following fall to take the internship. So it's doable. Thank you. Next slide, please. All right, our online certificate course format is an 8-week admin and supervision course cycle that's facilitated by an instructor such as myself on a weekly basis. These are highly interactive courses that include a balance of both whole group, team, and individual activities and assignments every week. It does require some facility with technology, but most of us through Zoom have gotten very comfortable with technology. We used to use Blackboard. We have now elevated to Canvas. And we still do use some version of TK20, but mostly because of now adopting Canvas in this last year, we have put the rest of those tools to bed because Canvas has really been very, very responsive to our needs as instructional supervisors. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. All right, so when you are accepted into our program, each student then receives a program plan. What you're seeing on the screen now is our 39 credit master's degree program plan, but there's also one for our certificate students. So you will fill out the courses based on when you think you want to plan to take them, how quickly you need to complete them, and then figure out when you expect to complete all the program courses so that you can graduate as expected. Thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, now we'll talk a little bit about the internship. So the internship is a capstone, as I mentioned earlier. Lots of people are always very excited to start their internship because it's an opportunity to demonstrate your mastery of the topics that you have been exposed to throughout the program. So for those who want to get the credential for the Admin 1, you have to be a currently certified teacher who will have at least 27 months of satisfactory teaching experience before they begin the internship. So the internship is undertaken, as I said, as the final capstone course in the sequence, and candidates typically complete this. This is a semester-long internship. As I said, the other courses are 8 weeks long, but the internship is actually for the full 16 weeks. It's for a full semester with the permission of their Admin 1 certified school leader. So that's why we encourage you now, even as you're considering how you might apply to our program, to think about who might serve as your mentor. When I interview our candidates, I do ask them, have they thought about who is going to be their mentor? Because you need to start building a plan so that when you start your internship, you are aware of how you're being supported through the process. We ask you to get that information as soon as possible because you are required to identify your mentor from your current site before you receive permission to actually begin the program. We, on our end at Johns Hopkins, we will assign you a Johns Hopkins University site supervisor as a course instructor who will meet with you and your designated mentor several times during the semester-long capstone internship to ensure that you are completing the work in a timely manner and on task. And so usually this works out very seamlessly. I can only say that I remember 2 times in my 12 years here that I've seen 2 students that were not able to successfully make it through with the support of the site supervisor. So typically the site supervisor troubleshoots all of the challenges that you might have during the internship, and they're there to answer all of your questions right away. At the conclusion of your internship, both your mentor as well as your site supervisor will successfully evaluate your performance in order to deem you ready to graduate. So your mentor will look at it from their perspective, and then the Johns Hopkins site supervisor will also look through your work to make sure that the level of submissions meets the requirements in order to graduate. And just so that you know, our internship program is aligned to meet the requirements of the PSEL, the Professional Standards for Educational Leaders, that was published in 2015. Thank you. Next slide, please. So measuring candidate knowledge, skills, and disposition. So as I started this conversation this afternoon, I talked about how we want our candidates to have all 3 of those domains in mastery. So we want to make sure that you have knowledge, that you have skills, adaptable skills, as well as the correct and proper disposition to be ready to go into school leadership. And so what's a way that we measure that you have this? Well, we have several different assessments that are deployed throughout the program to look at how successful and ready you are to go into the leadership. So for example, in the internship, The core beliefs reflection assignment is one way that we get through to understanding your readiness and your capacities. So remember, I also talked about this being a program that wants to make you ready. And so we evaluate your readiness by looking at your responses and things like this core beliefs reflection assignment. Also, we will take a look at a 200-hour state requirement for your effort log, where you will talk about what you are doing as you are going through the program to document your artifacts. Then there is a clinical supervision reflection where you will be looking at how candidates are supervised when they're actually in those positions in classrooms. You'll also do a mentor assessment, which is where your mentor is evaluating your progress. Then you will organize all of your documents, including your artifact collection, into a portfolio for a presentation. And then you have finally an internship portfolio reflection paper where you're reflecting upon the entirety of the process as you think about getting ready to go into the next steps for leadership. Thank you. Next slide, please. All right. So as I said earlier, we have a 5-course certificate in educational leadership for independent schools. These classes, we have worked to develop these through the pandemic. We did usually deliver this in a face-to-face format. Most of these courses are also now available in a online format. So you can find out more information about that if you reach out to us, but we certainly do have this current certificate in educational leadership, and those courses are online. Thank you. Next slide, please. All right, and now I would like to turn it over to one of our current graduates. He's about to graduate, and he is currently in our doctoral program. And I have to say, he has been such a joy for me to watch. One of the things that is such a blessing for me as a faculty lead in this program is that I get to see lots of people develop over the course of their careers. And so I watch them come in as teachers, and then I get to see them leave as graduates. And then very shortly after that, many of them start to go into leadership roles. And so Ray is one of those teachers. When I first met him, he was in a classroom position, and now you'll see that he is on the instructional leadership team in his school. He has now elevated to a team associate in the IEP team. So I'm very excited to introduce him to you. We have so many stories just like Ray's of successful students who are in our schools all across this country and around the world. But for today, I just would like to introduce you to one of my very favorite candidates who's now graduating and going into his dissertation. So also very excited that he is about to start his dissertation process. And so I'm very encouraged that many of our students then come back and start looking at doctoral work. So with that, I'll turn it over to you. This is Ray Walker. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I did log in again. I noticed that my screen, I don't know if I need to be on screen, but it was tilted. But I'm Ray Walker. As Dr. Anderson said, as I was listening to the overview, I did pull up my application to the program because I was just interested in where I was centered during my time when I was perhaps in some of you all's shoes. It was during the pandemic, and we were fresh in the pandemic. And as Dr. Anderson said, I was in my doctoral studies and still learning. And one of the questions I had, just given the context of myself as a learner and then an educator and then a practitioner scholar, if you will, was just what is ultimately the purpose of 21st century K-12 public education. And I entered the program with this inquiry, given that my own background, if I unpack my invisible knapsack, it includes things like being born and raised in Newark, New Jersey, having this private school education in the elite world of Boston, Massachusetts, and then coming down to Baltimore for my higher education attainment. So that trajectory, or not the trajectory, that pathway just really made me passionate about education, given that I noticed as a learner that oftentimes the quality of my education was predicated on my zip code and not so much of my interest in learning. As Dr. Anderson said, I work in Baltimore City Public Schools as an IEP team associate. That is in a nutshell, a special education manager at the largest school here in the district. And I also serve as adjunct faculty for a couple of schools in the Baltimore area. I am a Teach for America alumni, and I did not take advantage of some of the courses, the crossover between the admin cert and the master's content. Simply because I didn't know that this was something that I was interested in. And one thing that resonated with me when Dr. Anderson opened us was this idea of, are you ready to lead? And then also this pivot to your intentions with your impact with serving our young people and their caregivers. So my reasons for choosing, or one of my highlights throughout my time still at the School of Education is just that my professors in every single course, particularly in this certification, they saw in me what I had not seen in myself. And each time that made me hungrier for really tapping into why it is that I'm actually in the program, but also ensuring that I am constantly challenging myself to push the envelope in terms of looking at evidence-based practices and often being a reflective leader from my seat, because as Dr. Anderson said, I started the program as an educator, a special educator, just interested in learning more about how school leaders make their decisions, particularly, as I said, I was in the COVID-19 landscape, and I was just interested in how are we serving kids and what does 21st century education look like, given that we're switching to this virtual platform. And the reasons for choosing the School of Education, well, I had completed my master's with the School of Education, and I stayed because the expectations that there was the ceiling, the ceiling was the sky. And to that regard, there was nothing that I could not do in terms of my thoughts and flowing and from passion and from my very seat, not being a school leader or having managerial capacity within a schoolhouse that could really change the trajectory of just not my young people that I'm serving as a special educator, but the schoolhouse at large. And that was really poignant for me, simply because I was at a place in which my school leader did trust that I, having gone to Hopkins, have been prepared to lead from my seat, which was a phenomenal opportunity when thinking about climate and culture and creating experiences, not just for young people, but their caregivers alike. And my advice to anyone applying to Hopkins School of Education, particularly this program, is to just really tap into the why. Why are you pursuing your admin cert? What is it that fuels your fire? And perhaps you may have some problems of practice that you anticipate that you have the answer to. And one would argue that there's no answer, but perhaps you have some seeds to plant so that tomorrow could be better for yet another child. Or the angle that I often am entertained by, what is it that you plan to expose as a school leader? There are several hot topics and hard topics that need and desires create a courageous leader to open the conversation and dialogue so that everyone could join in solving the problems for all of our young people. Ultimately, I think that building relationships, one thing that Dr. Anderson also lifted was that perhaps I did it online, so the online platform. So many of my colleagues were from all over the world. So in the conversations and thinking about what's salient and on the West Coast or salient in perhaps a different country is really cool to wrestle with and to create meaningful discourse when thinking about the various experience that everyone comes into the program with. So I have had a joy of an experience and continue to while being in the School of Education, but ultimately it's, if I'm to say what's really super incredible, it's the faculty and their willingness to pour into you. Within my first year, I was on a call with Dr. Anderson because I was in a mid pivot. I'm like, oh gosh, I perhaps need to change schools, and I don't really know why, but I think that I need to move and expand my territory, and maybe there's somewhere else I need to go. And I was able to talk to Dr. Anderson through that. And then my last semester, which was this past semester, fall of 2022, I had Dr. B, in which I submitted an assignment, and her response to it was lovely in the sense that she suggested that I take it to a larger audience. So just that pouring in and really seeing that the students that they're serving are promises of tomorrow for the betterment of young people, communities, and caregivers is super, super incredible. And I'm incredibly honored and privileged to be with you all to share my experience today, but especially grateful to be able to reflect and be in community with our faculty. So I look forward to hearing from you all when you're on the other side of your journey as well, and being able to reflect on the impact that you have at your schools, but more so the impact that you have in building networks across state lines for serving young people and caregivers in communities. So it's been an awesome time, and I am thankful that I'm here to share the experience with you all today.
Thank you so much, Ray, for sharing your experience, and also Dr. Anderson as well. We'll now move on to go over the application and admission requirements for the programs. Applicants must submit a completed application, which can be found online on our website. The application fee is $80. You will also need a current resume or CV, as well as 2 letters of recommendation. Also, we ask that you submit a personal statement as well. And we do require all official transcripts, including institutions that you may have taken courses at, but did not actually receive a degree. Again, from all post-secondary institutions that you may have attended, all those transcripts will be required, as well as institutions where you did receive your degrees. And also, no GRE is required for any of the programs mentioned today as well. International students must follow a few additional steps in order to complete the application process. You must submit a TOEFL or IELTS score, which demonstrates English proficiency. If your degree was completed outside of the United States, you will need to complete a course-by-course credential evaluation. Information can be found on those requirements on our website. And you'll see the link here on this slide as well. For our tuition fees for the academic year 2023-24, the fees would be $10.25 per credit for online classes, plus the $20 per credit technology fee. And for face-to-face master's and certificate programs, the fee would be $10.25 per credit. Also, there is the registration enrollment fee of $175 per semester, and that is required for registration. And of course, again, in order to apply, there is that $80 application fee. Now, if you are interested in applying for federal financial aid, we strongly encourage you to apply for financial aid when you start your online application with us by completing a FAFSA form. You'll also find here external resources for funding options via scholarship.com and teacher.org. If you're interested in applying for financial aid, we strongly encourage you, again, to apply for financial aid by filling out that FAFSA, but also we do offer need-based scholarships that are partial as well at the School of Education, and you do have to have a FAFSA form on file for those as well. So at this time, we will open the floor for questions. Please do type your questions in the Q&A chat area, and we will read them aloud and answer your questions. Thank you.
And Dr. Anderson, it looks like we have a question, and feel free to read and answer the questions in the chat box.
I only see the Q&A. I don't see
The Q&A, excuse me, yes.
yes, I don't see any questions there yet. So if someone has a question, I'm happy to answer.
So the first, the question we have is, can a GPA of 3.2 secure an admission in graduate school of education?
So I would say that while I can't definitively tell you without looking at the transcript whether your GPA is acceptable, I would really just encourage you to apply and to not be intimidated by the name of our institution. As I said earlier, people who come into our program do sometimes feel that they may not measure up at Johns Hopkins, but you will find that the rigor of our program is very accommodating for students of lots of different backgrounds. So I just would encourage you to apply and submit your materials for evaluation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. Some frequently asked questions we get from the Office of Admissions. The first one is, graduate certificate for the School Administration and Supervision. Can that certificate be completed fully online? If so, are the courses asynchronous?
So yes and yes. Our courses are asynchronous because our students are all around the world. And so it becomes very difficult for us to have synchronous sessions. And so I do try to, in my courses, we do, and I encourage the rest of my faculty to also have some sync sessions where students can log in on at a particular time. But for example, if I have students who are in Nigeria, if I have students who are in Guatemala, they may be able to make it. Sometimes they can schedule their lives, or sometimes, like if we have students in China, it may be in the middle of the night. So we do try to have as much of an opportunity for students to tag into those sync sessions so that they can connect virtually. But we also know that not every student can do that, so it's not mandatory. And we just encourage students to connect with their instructors so that they can get additional support if they need it by reaching out. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. What about the Master of Science in Education, School Administration and Supervision? Can that be completed online fully?
Yeah, so most of those courses are able to be completed online. And so we do have, that program was built initially as a fully face-to-face program. The pandemic transitioned some things. And so, yes, we do have ways in which students can take substitutions if they need to finish that program as a fully online program. But the 5 core courses that I talked about earlier in the internship so the master's degree program is 13 courses, and those 5 courses plus the internship can be fully online. So yes.
And does the program for the master's lead to certification?
Yes, so we don't certify you. What we do here in the state of Maryland, because we're under the auspices of the Maryland State Department of Education, we put a stamp on your transcript that says that you are now eligible, your degree eligible for the Admin 1 stamp. Once you get that on your transcript, it's up to you to take that to MSDE or to your state certifying body to then roll that into your Admin 1. So the state will then take a look at what we have stamped. They'll see that you also have the requisite amount of hours, that you have the requisite amount of time, as I said, the 27 months, and then that qualifies you for the Admin 1. For those of you who also want to go on to your Admin 2 to become a school principal, you have to take one additional step of taking your praxis. We don't certify you. We don't have anything to do in terms of engagement with the praxis praxis, you would set that up on your own. And once you have a passing score on your praxis, that also goes to your state certifying body, could be here in Maryland, the Maryland State Department of Education. And once you have a passing score on that, then you will automatically qualify for the admin 2. So the degree plus the experience qualify you for the admin 1. To go to the admin 2 to become a school principal, you also should take the praxis in that subject area. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. The next question I have is actually for Ray. We have students who ask about the internship experience. So if you can talk a little bit about, being teaching like full time, and then also, working with your mentor at your school to fulfill the internship hours. What was your experience like?
Yeah, so my experience was awesome. I had one, it's really important that the person you identify as someone who's supportive of your trajectory. So I had the assistant principal who hired me for my current role served as my mentor throughout the process. The hard part for me, and this is just my own character flaw, is the inputting the documents of the proof of the hours. So there it's not that it's you're doing it along the way. You're not necessarily submitting it to a person per se, but you do have, there's deadlines along the semester to support you and make sure that you're on track to meet your 200 total hours. But a lot of it is it's autonomous to you. So I would like to think one should get used to collecting things like emails and snapshotting, agendas and different things like that. The plus perhaps is if you are used to a portfolio in the sense of you've completed the master's through JHU with Teach for America. I can only speak from that experience. The portfolio experience in the sense of collecting and gathering for proof is it's similar, not the same, but definitely similar. On average, it's about I would say 2 hours a week. Just making sure that you're tallying the things you're done. The truth is you're doing these things naturally. It's just being intentional about collecting evidence that you've done what you say that you do.
All right, thank you so much, Ray. And my final question is, Dr. Anderson, are you still accepting application for the summer start term for both programs?
Yes, absolutely. We are so excited to continue to accept applications for the summer. What we're seeing in the field is that there's a lot of transition. People are coming into leadership. People are stepping up to a new role in leadership. And so there's a constant churn. So we are absolutely accepting new applications. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those. And we're excited about what the field will bring in the future because we see that there's just a lot of movement, new opportunities. Here in Maryland, we have the blueprint. So they're adding lots of support staffing and coaching positions. And so some of those positions will also be leadership. And so we're very much looking forward to that.
Oh, it looks like
also,
we got a question. Oh,
yes,
Dr. Anderson, do you see it too?
Yes, I do. I see a question in the chat, in the Q&A that says, can this certificate grant you administrative certification in other states such as New York? So let me say that the long answer is yes. The short answer is, yes. The long answer is you have to decide whether when you finish this program, whether you want to get your Admin 1 certificate in Maryland, because we are governed, as I said, under Maryland rules. Some people, for example, if you live in New York, you work in New York, then you just want to take your transcript to New York. And what can immediately happen is that they can say, well, our New York requirements require you to take a class or two in addition to what you've already done. If you come through Maryland and you get your Admin 1 stamp here and you get certified in Maryland, then you can apply for reciprocity in New York in order to get your certificate transferred over there. So there's two ways to do it. Many people go through the way I just described by getting the Admin 1 stamp turned into a Maryland certification and then taking it back to their home state and getting reciprocity. But I've also seen many, many cases of people who go back to their home state with that Admin 1 stamp from our program in hand, and then they go through the process in their own state to get that taken care of. And in some states, I believe in New York, there may be an additional requirement of another course, like a special education course. So it just depends on where you live. Some states have the same requirements, apples to apples, and some have apples to oranges. And so you have to figure out how to transfer your current Admin 1 stamp into the certification itself. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. So it looks like there are no more questions here on the slide. We have some important contact information. If you have any admissions or questions about your application, please reach out to my colleague, Tanya McMillan. Her email and phone number is on the slide. Any program-related questions, please reach out to Lisa McNeil, and her email address is on this slide. Thank you again for your interest in the Johns Hopkins School of Education. Thank you to Dr. Anderson and Ray for the wonderful presentation today. We look forward to hearing from you. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Thank you.